Hi everyone, this is my experience as the Mexican American eldest daughter. My name is Michelle. I currently live with my parents and I am the eldest sister technically. I have three older brothers, um, but I'm the only girl, so technically I'm the eldest and I would like to share my experience with you all so far. So here is just an image of four tortillas on a comal. It seems something basic, but to me it has some other sort of significance. So for the caption I placed, so as a daughter of immigrant parents, my parents have always been traditional, especially my mother. She believed that it was necessary for a daughter to learn how to serve her brothers and to learn how to cook. So eventually when she marries, she'll have that the ability to do so. So when I was around 10 years old, she began teaching me in the kitchen, trying teaching me how to clean, teaching me how to cook. Um, so there was this one incident where one day when I was trying to flip tortillas with the spatula, I was too afraid to do it by hand. So she took the spatula away from me and she told him to flip them by hand. Um, I burned myself. It wasn't a big burn. It wasn't massive, but it was small and it hurt, of course. Um, and when I told her, she said that it was okay because her phrasing was, las mujeres deben aprender como aguantar la lumbre. Um, to that, in that literal sense, it means that you have to bear with the heat and you have to learn how to cook. But I didn't want to take it in the literal sense. So over time, I started thinking about what she said. I'm not sure why it stuck with me or why it resembled with me, but to me, it meant you have to learn how to become responsible and independent as a woman, especially as a Chicana. When you're not given that many opportunities, you have to learn how to look for them yourselves. So to me, that's kind of the significance that this has. It's to face the pressure that you have in society and try to break down as many barriers as you can. And now moving on to the next slide. So here we have a picture of cassette tapes. So there's various cassette tapes that my mom owes. We can see there's a couple of Los Caminantes. She has a couple of Vicente, and she has a lot of other ones, Juan Gabriel too. So this just reminds me of something vintage. For the caption I placed, in a sense, I am quite old-fashioned, and I mainly find the cause of this to be my parents' taste in music. Not only my mother, but also my father too. So my brothers and I grew up listening to their music all the time. It was what surrounded us. It's how we grew up since we were mainly Spanish speakers. And the music mainly came in the form of cassette tapes and more recently in CDs. So ever since I was around 12 years old, I fell in love with this generation of music, both in Spanish and in English. In Spanish, it just reminded me of my childhood, how my mother would always play this type of music. And in English, I began exploring it when I was around in sixth grade, seventh grade, with artists such as Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Doris Day, Frankie Valli, any of the very very old classic music, whether it's 40s, 50s, 60s. I just loved it. The Beatles too, of course. And this crave for vintage music was born, and since then I haven't stopped seeking more of it. And my music preference may seem odd to most, because typically what the current generation listens to would be anything from reggaeton to banda. But my parents taught me to appreciate the lost beauty of the older generation, not only in music, but in our culture as well. So the cassette tapes kind of remind me of how it is important to always look back at the root of things, at the origins of things, to where they began and how they have evolved over time in order for us to grow as a person, and in order for especially me to grow as a person. Um, yeah, so that's a bit about the cassette tapes. And the next slide. So here we have a picture of course, CSUF. This picture in particular is a place that I pass by almost every day when I'm walking home towards the bus stop. Um, so here I have, since elementary school, my parents would always emphasize how important and powerful education was. My mother, whenever she would walk me to school, to elementary school, she would do her best to tell me how I should always take into consideration how important it was and take the most advantage of it as I could, especially because she wasn't able to fulfill her, or rather, to complete her education. Since at a young age, she was taken away from school, and she was, excuse me, she was forced to kind of handle the obligations at home. So taking care of her brothers and sisters. Um, so the way I saw it is that I was her hope. So I became a hope in my family. My objective became clear. I needed to focus on my work and make my family proud. Because failing was not an option, and it still isn't an option. I can still feel the pressure on my shoulders, this need to become a role model, this need to make a change, this need to prove my worth as a Mexican American daughter, and this need to prove myself that I can do it. My mother mainly would always tell me how nothing is impossible as long as you set your mind to it, which I still believe holds true to this day. Um, so just having the opportunity to be a part of this 4-year institution that is one of the biggest Hispanic serving schools, um, in California is just something that a lot of people, I believe, take for granted. But I think when you're a Chicana trying to strive for greatness, trying to prove your worth to society, it's something um, that should always be kept in mind because not a lot of people have that opportunity. So yeah, it's just an image that I pass by every day, and it's just a reminder of what I'm working towards. And for the next slide. So here we have a picture of some math homework um, for my niece, who in that image, she was in 7th grade, which was last year. And I took a picture of this because I wanted to kind of remind myself what other aspects I was working towards. So, as a first generation student, I have learned the value of education and the significance that it holds. So, I want to ensure that my family understands its importance too. I only have one niece, no nephews at all. So, she is currently an 8th grader, and I want to capture her attention with the wonders of higher education. Um, so my goal is for her to not only pursue it, but to fall in love with it like I did. Um, so most of my evenings when I get home after class, what I would do is I would help my niece with her homework before I would start on my own, because she's mainly my target right now. She's my objective. So she's small, and I want to take advantage of that. I want to make sure that she knows how important education is. I want to emphasize that in her mind, because I think the system right now is a bit complex ever since COVID. So some students tend to find that education isn't the same anymore. But I don't want that aspect to change in my niece's mind. So I just want her to um, I want to ensure that she's successful. I want to ensure that she has all the help that she needs because I know that growing up, I didn't have that much help. Mainly, I would have to rely on myself or a couple of my friends to get the help that I needed. So I want to be that resource for her, and I want her to not only aspire to become something great, but to be able to succeed in whatever she sets her mind to. And so for the next slide. So here is an image of the public library. Specifically, it's the 3rd floor, which I find to be very relaxing and peaceful. So one of the few places of comfort that I can find time for myself is the library. Its silence and solitude allows me to break free from my chaotic world, where I can have time for myself and I'll be my family's therapist for at least a day. It contains form of escapism for me, where I can delve into stories. My love for literature has kept me company throughout the years, and aside from books, my friends have helped me along the way too. Though I don't have many, my friends have allowed me to form meaningful relationships where we can share a perspective of the world that we live in. So adding on to this, I often think that being like the daughter of immigrant parents, You have a lot of standards to live up to, especially double standards if you're a Chicana. You're expected to be responsible, but not only responsible outside, but responsible in the household as well. Um, some of the double standards that don't apply to men, of course, they do apply to women in my family, at least. Um, so at times, a lot of things can happen at home, and you tend to hear everything that happens, especially for me. My parents tell me like two sides of a story, or it's my brothers that have a conflict, and I don't really have time for myself. Um, so what I tend to do is I tend to go to the library, just read, and try to forget about the world for at least a day and go into another world and escape my own. So it's just, I suppose you can say it's a sense of mental stability that you're trying to maintain. So you're trying to be both this role model and this daughter for your family, but you're also trying to satisfy the needs for yourself of trying to be be stable and be responsible and just be at peace. So this is one of the ways that I do that. Another way is just talking to my friends, which I only have a couple, like very few friends, and they're one of my closest friends ever since uh, middle school. So I trust them to kind of have ourselves share our perspectives of what we live through, which it may not be the same, but of course it's nice to listen to different perspectives and different and just embrace that diversity that our world needs. Um, and yeah, there's nothing negative about this. I want to say, just want to emphasize, it's just that sometimes when you have so much pressure on your shoulders and you don't want to fail your parents, you don't want to fail at all. It's that fear that kind of stays with you, but at the same time, you have to learn how to manage it, which is something that I'm trying to do right now, um, as a Chicana. So yeah, that's some of the things that I have experienced so far as a Mexican American daughter. Yeah, thank you guys.